Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic podcast. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. It means the world to me. Thank you very, very, very much. And today, we welcome along another movement director extraordinaire through these doors today. And she goes by the name of Imogen Knight. And let's take a moment to introduce Imogen and her work. She is a movement director and artist working with the body with choreography, connectivity, and somatic movement. She works across a number of mediums, from theatre, film and TV, classical and electronic music, performance and visual art, photography, and opera. And in the music business, she's worked with some of the brightest minds in the industry, such as the London Sinfonietta, the Southbank Sinfonia, London Contemporary Orchestra, Matthew Herbert, Keeley Forsyth, Phoebe and Isobel Waller-Bridge, as well as the English National Opera and many, many others. For theatre, she is involved as a movement director. She's been involved in so many things. So here's a small sample of the work that she's done. Most recently, Look Back in Anger at the Almeida, Under Milkwood at the National, starring Michael Sheen, LeBlanc at the National, King Lear at the Almeida, and The Crucible at the Old Vic in 2014. Of those last three, directed by the fantastic Yaël Farber, who's also been on here. And for TV, she has been involved with Harlots for ITV, Patrick Melrose for Sky, starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Call the Midwife, The Hollow Crown, and most significantly, the most nominated and award-winning show of our time thus far, Chernobyl, for HBO and Sky Atlantic. And that's just a small sample of Imogen's incredible work. So it's an honor to have you today, Imogen. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to be here. It's always so interesting hearing that read out, because you're kind of like, oh yeah, you have pictures of all of those experiences. So thank you. Thanks for the introduction.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here. So, I mentioned there Under Milkwood, which you worked on at the National, which was the first thing I saw back in the theatres after the lockdowns. So, to begin at the beginning. So, in your case, Imogen, where did it come from? The love of movement, being in the arts, being in this business. Where did it come from?
I love that question, because it goes all the way back, doesn't it? It's there's a few things when I was thinking about that question. I guess I remember I kind of in a more dance movement way. I went to quite alternative dance classes when I was very young. Very a kind of mixture between like formal contemporary dance, but also very expressionistic. Like the woman who ran it was a dance artist just on her own, and she used to run these children's classes and adult classes. But what was so beautiful is every summer we'd do these shows, usually at Cecil Sharp House in Camden, which is really near for me. But there would just be this multi-generational kind of quality, like you'd see some, maybe your parents if they were in the adult dance classes, but you just see all the generations of dance, and you would learn. You would almost be like a rite of passage, like learning that age group's dance for each year, and you would look forward to like, oh, when can I learn that dance? And it was something about seeing all ages moving. So that was one, and it was definitely alternative. So it wasn't ballet, and it wasn't kind of overly formal on the body, but it was expressionistic, like you. Yeah, and it was kind of, sometimes she even used like jazz music, and it felt like it was very much through somebody's vision. So that was that. And I also remember on one performance I was just allowed to wear some grass skirt, like and able to be a giraffe. I mean, like grass skirt wearing giraffe. So, there's clearly some kind of expression, authenticity coming through. But so there was that. So that was a very like alternative way of experiencing movement and doing movement. And also kind of the multi-generational thing. But the other part of it, which is a much more kind of gestural part of it, perhaps, is I grew up as some of my childhood in Turkish Cyprus, and it was a much more rural living. And in the village we grew up with, a very, very close family friend. She was deaf, and she also had no formal sign language education. So she communicated through her own gestures and some sound, but not making word sounds, so her sound. And she kind of looked after me for a long period of time. She couldn't have kids herself, and so she had a real a kind of grief about that. And we connected in this really extraordinary way. And we communicated through like gesture that was our own and, well, mainly hers. But I learnt how to communicate with her through gesture and some sound. And it really, she was a very, very, profoundly important person in my heart at that age, and obviously still is. She's passed now, but like there was something very like went beyond language, went beyond. We had quite different cultures, very different kind of. She lived in a very rural village, and I most of the time lived, in North London, and but there was this kind of connectivity piece that wasn't about words, that wasn't about kind of the normal conversations you might have with someone. And we touched a lot as well. So I think there was something about that I really I found a connection piece in, and a connection piece that travels over age and cultures, and there's something about that. I think that when I was thinking about this question, I was like, she just comes straight to my mind about gesture and authentic gesture through how that person wants to express themselves.
Yeah, it seems as though, and this might sound like a bit of an obvious observation here, but it's like, would you say that she showed you like that was the first time that you found that language and communicating a lot of the time is non-verbal as well?
Yeah,
Yeah, because
absolutely.
like a
Yeah,
look or just a touch or just
yeah,
a little gesture can just say 100 words, right?
absolutely. And that's exactly what she did. And we were in really quite deep communication all the time, and I could sense her, and I could even sense her when she was coming down the path. I'm gonna like even I could hear the way her feet in her slippers came down the path, and
Mm,
like it was sensory, um and very yeah. And again, she was a different age to me. She was like in her when I was probably, in my younger years, before maybe 10, she was in her 40s. So there was also a completely different age. And, she was
mm,
somebody who hadn't had any formal education, hadn't been to school, anything like that. So
yeah,
it crossed a lot of things. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, do you still know any of the sign language? Do you still do practice it at all?
I mean, no, I mean, not with, I remember she, I mean, this is obvious. She did good. And when someone was dead, she'd do this.
Oh,
Like
really?
they're Finnish and they're underground.
Oh, wow.
And, um, but she but like no. And actually I'm always really drawn towards sign language as a I always I'm so sad that they don't teach it in schools, because
Mm,
children really use it all the time. They use gesture, and they use physical articulation all the time. In fact, it's a lot more easy access for them a lot of the time.
mm,
And it's a real shame that feels like it's not considered, to obviously to include the deaf community, but also just because it feels so universal.
mm,
There are so many signs that we understand. And I mean, I'm gesticulating right now and to emphasize something. So,
mm.
but yeah, so it's something I kind of I'd love to be able to learn more of.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
for sure, for sure. And I think, yeah, you're right. And I think we should encourage it, because,
absolutely.
not only for diversity reasons, but, because it's fascinating to communicate without words. And, like I said just now, like a look or just one little
Yeah,
gesture or just one little, like, or something like that,
yeah,
or like this, then
yeah.
you know what to do. You know
And
what
when
to do.
people touch their heart when they're saying something, or, make contact with themselves as they're describing something, it's all of those. We're speaking all the time. Like our bodies are speaking all the time, like from the inside out. And I think, children are very direct as well. They feel something and they generally express it. And
Yeah.
it feels such a important way to involve way more ways of expression, and also kind of encourage the body to speak more, rather than feeling like the hierarchical idea is that you should eventually learn your words so that you can explain yourself or describe, whereas
Yeah.
actually, you know
Yeah.
not having such a hierarchical structure about what expression is.
Yeah, screw the hierarchy. Who cares about them? A show that sort of jumped to mind there. Have you seen Lie to Me with oh, no, I've forgotten the leader, Tim Roth. Have you seen it? That
No, I haven't. I've heard of it, which is why I was
yes,
like, have I seen it?
yeah, I've seen a couple of episodes. I can't say I've seen the whole thing, but I really want to. So I'm definitely on my to watch list. But it's a premise about this. Well, he's a lie expert. He can tell when someone's lying. And I didn't realize is that obviously you can say a lie. You can say, "Oh, I didn't do that," but then suddenly, like he'll notice like
Yeah.
jitters, like the bottom of your eye will just start to do that, or you'll start doing that, or your jaw will start moving or something, and it's basically your body's way of like adjusting to a lie, but you're saying no, that's not right, and you would just do something like that. So the
Yeah.
body always tells the truth as a result of that.
Yeah. And it's all the things we do in order to find ways that it doesn't, or it protects us from telling the truth. Or
Mm,
so yeah, we are an extraordinary and miraculous thing.
we are
Yeah,
indeed, we are divine. One could say, but
absolutely.
yeah. So I want to just stay on this like discovery thing for just a moment. Can you remember like? Was there a certain performance or certain like in the theater or maybe or even on a screen or wherever you saw it that particularly a movement piece which really inspired you and made you really sort of solidify your sort of career path of going, yeah, I want to be in movement.
Hmm. You know what? Nothing kind of, not nothing, because I was exposed to quite a lot of stuff, but nothing kind of really feels definitive. But I mean, I was also, yeah, there was a lot of different things I was kind of exposed to, taken to. I remember going to some mime that was very kind of like fringe. It was definitely like European. I think it was French. Like it was kind of really like pure. And I remember being kind of like quite engrossed in that. Again, probably because there was no words as such. Not that I knew I didn't kind of respond to words in the same way, but I really enjoyed kind of feeling like I could follow with my whole system, my whole body. So I remember that. Um, and I don't know, and I was taken to a few quite out there art parties that were not for children, but my dad was going through he had quite a kind of artful, what would you say, like group of friends at a particular time, and a lot of sculptors and various things. And so I sometimes was taken to these parties, and I do remember a lot of like feather boas, trans people. Like I just remember it being very expressionistic, very kind of,
Very extravagant.
yeah, like the kind of sexuality, gender expression of all types, just being available. And I
Wow,
remember just being like, oh yeah, you know. So
cool.
I think I was also, yeah, it felt kind of also kind of dangerous as well,
Yeah, it
like
sounds like
being,
sounds like a Freddie Mercury party.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was a bit. It was definitely very performance art, like that way, like people just being, but also most of them being artists and people who just live on the bit on the fringes of society.
Yeah, nice. I mean,
Yeah.
it's like you when you see people move in a different way, you're like, maybe it's like when you're a kid. It's like, is that allowed? Is that a
Mm.
thing? It's like, does that happen? It's like, yeah. I said we all move in different ways, actually. And I think, funny
Oh
enough,
yeah.
I just want to mention that you did a great interview. Actually, I know this was going back 10 years now with Matt Truman in the stage, which I
Yeah.
found prior for today. And I remember you was talking about how I think I've got the quote here actually. Have I got it here? Anyway, no, we'll come to that later. But you mentioned that we all move, but we all move. We all walk relatively similarly, but we're all different at the same time.
Mm.
So yeah, so like, well, what have you noticed about how unique each individual person is when they move? Like in life, or maybe even in the rehearsal room as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my biggest loves of how similar and how different we are, even almost in the same breath.
Hmm.
and people's life experiences can be, of course they're within the body, so, but you don't necessarily know that, so, or you don't know the story, so you're picking up on what you're seeing. But also what I also love is really panning out, so that you're not putting a story on someone, and actually as they move, and maybe as you get to know them, if they're an actor, let's say, you realize, so much of there are so many dimensions to people, reasons why this is like this, that's like that, reasons why eye contact might be harder for some and easier for others, and actually we want everyone to have their own differences and be in the world and be able to exist in the world with all of these things, and to find ways of celebrating them, to find ways of welcoming them, because in a way that is the fucking beauty of everything, and that's the truth within somebody as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think, or another thing that I know that I'm drawn to is, well, for a long time I've kind of practiced and been to classes of a movement practice called Five Rhythms, which was made in the 60s and still keep going. And I find it really, for me and for kind of how I like to explore and express myself, I find it great. And it's a kind of, basically, it's very authentic movement. So it's about 2 hours, and you start, and it's called Five Rhythms because you go through 5 different rhythms. But of course, you're not instructed to go. The rhythms change, and you can respond however you feel in the moment. So it's really trying to bring your system into the present moment of what needs to move. And I've definitely found that since doing that, I've been doing that for maybe the last 10 to 15 years. It's about seeing how, and all these sessions invite all different ages and people and orientations. And I think I've always found really profound is how movement and how responses are all entirely different in one room. And that has continuously been like a resource and a kind of what's the word? Like it kind of what's the word? Like polishes your eyes, so that you never just get used to seeing the same thing. You're always surprised by people, and in awe.
Oh yeah,
in awe of people, how their bodies move, and even. And I speak for myself, how mine has moved and has changed over time as well.
Yeah, for sure.
And I also now take my daughter, who's 7, to these sessions, which are mostly adult, as in it's in the daytime, so children are welcome. But she really enjoys, and I really enjoy her being in amongst mostly adults who are moving all in their own way. So she's experiencing playfulness or expression in adults, which you wouldn't see, down the road on the street.
No.
And so that feels really important to me, as a kind of to bring it into the younger generation, that the expression and and moving your body however feels right in that moment is exactly what you should be doing.
Exactly. So one thing I noticed that you trained at the Northern Contemporary Dance School and somewhere called The Place.
Which is London Contemporary Dance School.
Yeah.
London School of Contemporary Dance.
London School of Contemporary Dance. Nice. How was your training?
My training at Northern Contemporary Dance School was pretty amazing in terms of like looking back on it. I mean, it was very, very strict when I was there. I don't know so much about how things have changed, and of course they would have over time, but it was very strict. It was very competitive. You were at a very early stage in a 3-year program, you were streamed. So you were put in, you weren't just a first year, second year, third year. So in my first year, I was streamed, and all my classmates of my age and my stage were kind of fractured off. And so I was put in a slightly higher class, which, in some ways is kind of can feel quite like, oh wow, and in other ways it's pretty tricky because it's competitive. But it didn't, I wouldn't say it damaged me in any way, but it was a very, very extreme and severe training. That doesn't mean wasn't without fun or without enjoyment. I was very, very dedicated to training every day, pretty much 7 days a week. And if I wasn't in school, I would be at the gym, or I trained my body so intensely because in a way you're like at that school and at that time you had to be an athlete. And the school was also founded originally on or Phoenix Dance Company, which is an extraordinary dance company, and the kind of caliber of dancers is they're like athletes, they're extraordinary. So the kind of ethos of the school was really about strength and rigor. It wasn't, I guess, it wasn't so much about, oh, I'm just going to be myself. It was like, you've got to train, and you've got to get stronger, and you've got to get more flexible, and you've got to keep progressing. It's not which I would have now, a more kind of fluid approach. It was, you were kind of marked all the time.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't regret it. I don't regret it because it gave me such an extraordinary work ethic, because it really taught me about, which is a mixture, but actually I think it's really good. But it really taught me about when you come into the studio, you don't bring your other stuff, like, which I know now feels, you're like, oh, like it's, but in a way, there's something really important about that. It's about like making the difference between what is work and what is you, and can you contain yourself, and can you contain the work to the best of your ability, obviously, and to the most truthful of your ability. But actually for me that felt really important, because how I come into a rehearsal space, how I kind of work with other people, I'm fully present, I'm fully there to do the job, very, very focused. And I think in a kind of subconscious way, it taught me about some containment about my own life and my own self, and when it's time to work.
Yeah.
And for me, that feels really important. I'm not masking anything or hiding anything, but I'm able to shift from one environment to another.
Yeah.
Without causing myself any kind of, like I say, I'm not masking or pushing something down, but it was also quite rigorous about that in that school. They were like, leave it outside.
Yeah. God, you wouldn't get away with saying that now, would you? But
No, which, it's interesting because it allowed me to find a focus. But also saying that there's another side to it, which isn't, again, it's not a bad side, because I don't really see things as good or bad like that. But the training was so rigorous and so about pushing and about extension. Everything was kind of like training to be an athlete. That it's funny now, in the past, people would be like, oh, but you're so embodied because you're a dancer. You're so in your body. And actually, I would always question that, because I've come a long way in realizing that the training to be a dancer at that stage for me was very much about bypassing pain, overriding, and I don't regret it, but I came out of that training and all of that dance kind of technical way of being in your body very disassociated from the feelings of any sensation in my body. My body mostly knew how to tense and how to stretch and how to extend, be like 110. It didn't know any other softness. It didn't know how to do the opposite, which is to kind of have a bit of free flow or have some fluidity. My nervous system was primed in a very particular way.
Yeah.
So I've had to also spend now my time in the last 10 years undoing that, but grateful for the experience of being out of my body to then coming back into it.
Yeah. I think you described in the article, you described it as like a military training.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
sounds like you're here to do a job. Anything outside of this is not important. And thankfully, we had when I was at drama school at GSA, we had a fantastic laughing coach called Rose Ryan. Who's no longer there, unfortunately, but she's been on here a couple of times. And she said, "Look, people say like leave your stuff at the door when you come in." I'm like, no, bring it all in, I want to see how it, get it out of your body, use it to try and shake something off, or just help you do the work. The Laban efforts of like Slash, where you're just like throwing yourself around all over the place, literally just getting it all out of your system. And it's like, I think that's much more healthier in a way, particularly in this
it can be, as long as, because sometimes what happens with the system is if you really, get all of your stuff and throw it all in one big explosive cathartic go, what you're doing to the system is you're kind of causing an explosion in the system. And then sometimes what can happen a lot with people in drama schools sometimes is it's kind of out, and then there's this weird retraction of, well, there's no safe holding of it, because in a way it's out, and then there can be feelings of overexposure, shame, whatever, and ultimately the system feels a bit like, oh God, and you can feel great for a bit, and but then there's no kind of containment. So I absolutely work with people of like, bring what's happening right now. But I know from the work I've done in terms of trauma work and the nervous system, I'm careful to create a container where you can go to the edges of this stuff. You can edge it, and bring it in. But what we don't want is, well, what might not be helpful for the actor is a kind of vomit out. And then then the repercussions can be much harder for the person. And it's a kind of not sustainable way to work your body or work what's in there.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, I'm so angry, so I'm just going to, what's the word? Like, meet it with the same kind of explosion. But it's, like anything, kind of really deep integrated work happens in the micro. So can you feel the impulse? Can you, rather than just fucking exploding all over the place. And then when you really feel the need to explode, it's really rooted in the body. It's really there. Everything is in consent. Because sometimes we can explode and actually there's some part of us that wasn't ready or feels kind of like, oh, fuck, where did we go? And now everyone's looking at me and all of that. So you want to titrate it, which just means a little bit and then back, and a little bit.
Yeah. So that's a healthier way of doing it. But
it's healthier, and it's just, for an actor, it's way more sustainable because it means they can build. Because some actors will find if they really go there and really explode, in a way you've overridden the system, so it's all a bit of a mess. And then the next time you come to rehearse that, they're a bit like, one, I don't want to go there again because that was exhausting. And also they're a little bit thrown because it was a lot, and there's a few pieces of, was that me? Was that the character? It's a little bit too overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so you can't really. But if you're doing it in a contained way and still going to some edges, but you're able to bring them back, and so that they can basically learn to flex the muscles repeatedly. In the same situation, rather than just like do a marathon without training.
Yeah, of course, you don't want to do that. But no, you'd hurt afterwards enormously. But I think that's a good segue onto some of your work, actually. And I think just that flexing muscles, the big outcry and everything. I think it's a good lead on to the work you did with Yaël on the Crucible in the Old Vic in 2014, which I know I've talked about extensively on here, but I love it so much. And of course, we've got other things to talk about as well, but we'll kick off with that. So in particular, your work with Richard Armitage, who played John Proctor, he had that moment in Act 4 where he has that line, "Because it is my name." And there's this almost like I mean the way that Miller wrote it, you know, there's it's like a crescendo of just like things getting louder and louder and louder and louder and louder, and suddenly there's that bass drum going bang, and then it's like because it is my name,
Mm.
and it's like and you know as it says in the play with the cry of his soul,
Yeah.
and yeah. So yeah, how did you work with Richard on sort of keeping it healthy and sustainable throughout that process?
Well, Richard is an actor who wants to go in every time, and
Mm,
it's beautiful. Like, and he's also an actor who knows his craft. So
mm,
he, it's also actors who have flexed those muscles and know where they can push, and sometimes that's also experience, right?
mhm,
You kind of, he's an experienced marathon runner.
mm,
So he's done it a few times. So he was somebody who I mean, most of the rehearsal for the whole cast, we were in every single day, 10
mm,
to 6. So there was a very kind of intense community made, like from the beginning. And Richard was kind of part of that. So we did a lot of improvs where people would he would move people around, or he would be moved around or squashed by the company, or kind of
yeah,
find ways. I remember there was something where we taking care, but we put all of our everyone put their some part of weight on him until he had to kind of come out. And of course, this is all done with
safety,
yeah,
obviously.
with care and consideration, and also making sure the actors are always responsible for their own bodies.
Mm,
So take really being able to hear where is enough for them, because in that cast as well, we had a lot of different ages,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
quite a few senior actors. So, but it's once they're in control and once they're in that sense of their own body and their own agency to offer what is manageable for them, you've got everyone at 100%.
Mm,
In their own way. And so we did a lot of that, a lot of physical kind of containment of Richard, and where he had to speak from those kind of really pressurized places. Yeah, a lot of exercises that were confronting about power and taking power and the male female dynamic in that era,
yeah.
kind of primal instincts. A lot of that work. And I remember that was the first piece I'd ever worked with Yael on. And we did we met, I think we had one meeting or one or two meetings before we ended up working, before I got the job. And I was so frightened to meet her. I was like, oh my God, and our first meeting, I was just kind of, I think I don't know what I said. I have no idea. I think I just bumbled away. But when we got in a circle on that first day of rehearsal, and we were maybe going around, I think she was talking obviously about the show, and we were going around maybe saying our names and maybe something. She often asks, somebody to. And I remember I said, I found you, because I genuinely for the first time felt like I had found someone who who wanted to make work in a way that was so raw, but also really in kind of through the body, contained, and kind of felt like it spanned many types of theatre. It kind of felt more ancient, just really big gestures, nothing too kind of urban or civilized. It was really about people being able to really show gut instinct through
Yes.
whatever they were doing or saying. And of course, an Arthur Miller play is a perfect. I mean, that particular play is perfect for that, because there's also the kind of clenched fistness of it as well, this repression and the girls. And so we really like to work with polarity, you
Mm,
know. And I remember we had rehearsals late into the night with those girls sometimes, like really we wanted to work them so that they were working at night, which is a kind of more mystical time, so
okay.
we kind of I don't know if you could do that now. I think people would be a bit like, oh, I'm not working at night.
Okay, then no, we're doing this right. You will stay until we get it
Yeah.
right.
But it was a very we played almost the same piece of music every single day, for
Wow.
every single morning the same piece of music was playing. So there's in her work and how we both work together, there's a lot of repetition, there's a lot of endurance, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of kind of, you feel like you step into the work. You have to just step in. You can't be too much, like on my way into work with her, I would listen to very particular sounds or music, not just listen to any old thing or be on my phone, or I would prepare myself so I could really immerse myself as an artist in that room with
Yeah.
all of those other artists.
Yeah, I think there's another moment which, well, there's two actually sticks out. Is like you talked about the idea of the time male female positions in society and stuff, and there's a moment towards the beginning between Abigail and Proctor when she was that I forgot how strong you are, John Proctor. What's this mischief here? And then she confesses to him that they were dancing in the woods that night,
Yeah.
and then that's probably one of the very, very, very few times that Abigail actually tells the truth, because for the rest of the play, she just lies through her teeth. And there's that beautiful moment where I remember it's Samantha who played Abigail.
Yeah. Samantha Coley.
Coley, yes, big shout out to her, amazing actress. You had that beautiful scene where Abigail was almost like stalking John through the space, and then there was one point she was holding off him like a hug, which didn't feel like a hug; it more like attachment and clinging on to them. And then I think there's one where she jumped over the bed or something. It's just like this beautiful little dynamic between the two of them. Of she wanted to rekindle what they had because of course they had an affair, and then and all that stuff. She was the one chasing after the man, and you're thinking there's usually the man chasing after the woman. And
Yeah.
then the other one was in Act Three, which I mentioned this to Yaël. It's that it felt like when the girls essentially they've won the case. When Goody Proctor says no, he's never been a lecturer, and that one time she chooses to lie is completely the wrong time. And anyway, so in that victory dance when the girls are screaming and they're throwing themselves around all over the place. I mean, those two in particular, what was it like to work on those two where the movement is just like full on?
Yeah. It was extraordinary, and they were extraordinarily available to go there and to really find that kind of, it's very primal, that kind of expression where in a way you're right on the precipice of whether you are of control, and I love working in that place where of course the actor is in control, but they're really pressing into the edge again, but they're not necessarily going right over it, but they're and for I think young actors at the time, it was a really important place for them to really get that kind of visceral way of expressing and being, and yeah, they were amazing to work with, and it felt like what I always do is I create the work through them. It wasn't like, oh, do these movements, put your arms up here, and I don't work like that. So it was very much through kind of how they worked as a group, and then kind of moments that I saw that I was like, oh, it's some of that, and then it becomes more organic, and then they're owning it for themselves, and that's really because again, it needed to. What you don't want to feel in that moment is it's suddenly there's a choreographer who's come in and, well, for me, and kind of made a sequence,
Yeah.
because I'm watching choreography. I'm not watching like something that could happen. Anything could happen right now. That's what I want to feel. You want to feel really like this group of young women are right at the edge where reality is being a bit distorted, even in their own system.
Yeah, it was a really you feel like any moment was like you said there was on edge.
Yeah,
You're on a knife edge at any moment because I mean Act Three in particular of that everything about it because I sadly I didn't see it in the theatre. I saw it via digital theatre,
great.
which is still available now, guys. So go check it out. And
Yeah,
just that whole act, the whole thing is just flawless. But there's something about Act Three, the way that you guys did it, just every single moment of Act Three was just pure brilliance. You never knew what was going to happen. Even I can't speak, but I've read the Crucible in like year 8 at school, and I didn't understand it at all. And then it was like years later, I was like, oh, okay, this is what it's all about. And then Act Three, it felt like anyone who's read the play, studied the play. It felt like you were watching it for the first time,
Yeah.
and you forgot what was going to happen, and you're going, "What the hell is happening here?" It just, yeah. What was your experience of Act Three? Because Act Three is so full of physicality and
Yeah.
vocal stretching, and big like moments where you just go like that. At any moment, anything could just happen. I mean, what was it like? Act Three in particular.
It was like that making it.
Yeah, okay, right.
It was really like that. I mean, it's also real credit to Arthur Miller, right? That
Oh,
there is
hugely.
nothing. I mean, Yael, is kind of really his work means a lot to her, and but that particular play, like, there's if you follow the rhythm of how he's written it, it's exactly that experience.
Yeah.
He's like a choreographer, or he is so extraordinarily rhythmic. Like how the text goes when there are breaks or stage direction, but like and even in the text, how the rhythm of it is, you're following it, you're inside it. I found it extraordinary. And you don't, in a way, you get out the way of it and let that part, because it is a roller, it's a train off the tracks. It's like it's just fucking gonna continue,
Yeah.
and you can't stop it. And that's the feeling that we wanted. We kind of, I'm not sure if this is not a memory, but there was something. I don't know if we had this. We definitely had a metronome in the room. That
Did
was
you?
it. We've done that before. We had a metronome in the room, and sometimes we'd just put it on, and then it would just go faster in that. So that would be the sound underneath rehearsing this scene.
Wow.
So it's like, and also, I mean, it's probably really annoying for the actors, but it's got that thing where it's like you drive, and I always remember Yael saying that a lot of the time. Just you have to drive this. This scene needs to feel like there's there's no stopping it. It's like Thelma and Louise, it's
Yeah.
going right
Just keep
off.
going.
Yeah, because otherwise it's also otherwise you become too much in the you should feel it from the bottom up rather than top down.
Yeah.
And so you don't want to get too like, you want to just feel like somebody's got you by the scruff of the neck and they're literally, you know,
Yeah.
taking you through that. So that took a lot of, in terms of also the lines, it just took a lot of everyone being on, because it has to feel like
Mm.
everyone is, every part of their animal senses is alive and ready, you know,
Yeah.
hypervigilance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would think Yar said this in our episode, that is it true that if an actor dropped a line or went, oh shit, sorry, what's my line? You go, okay, start again. We go from the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So even if it was like, I could get this image of like you go two lines before the final, and I think it was, I think Adrian Schiller, God bless him, who's no longer here. Sadly passed last year. Love you, mate, wherever you are. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful actor.
Yeah,
Wow.
amazing guy. And I was lucky enough to interview him actually a few years ago. He's also
Oh,
been on here, and yeah, we had an amazing chat about the Crucible as well, and some other things as well.
he
So
was
yeah,
extraordinary in that piece.
yeah,
And an extraordinary, it was a lot, I would say that there was, for a lot of people, they'd never experienced someone like Yael. Like she
mm,
was different. She is different to how most people do theatre. And if you get on the Yale train, you get on and you just, but like it takes, it takes a real commitment and also a type of faith in somebody that can be really frightening for some people. But Adrian, like well, all of them, but he was really there, and he really trusted something. And in a way, with trusting something, there's a surrender that you have to do to it. You have to
mm,
soften and let the piece kind of take you. And he was really beautiful in that, and he cared so deeply about that.
yeah, yeah. And there was a beautiful moment because in Act Four, no, sorry, in Act Three, Reverend Hale, who Adrian played, came in. He has a line up, Your Honour will not conceal it. My hand shakes yet as with a wound. And I asked him about that. I said, but you kept it going all the way to the end, even in the final moments, your hand was still shaking. And he said, well, yeah, because I know it's in the script. There was nothing there to suggest that he stops. Like there was nothing in it to suggest, oh, his hand's been healed or he's secure in himself. So I just kept it. And obviously, Yael sort of let him do it. And of course, you know, if you watch it now, the final scene, you see his hand just doing that the whole time. And, you know, yeah. And just like we were talking about earlier, just like one little sign, the rest of your body could be completely still.
Yeah.
And in like, I know my truth. But yet there's this one little thing that sticks out.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
shame, that's his grief, that's his anxiety, just in one little movement, just his hands.
Yeah.
It shows how
And that's
powerful.
what we, as humans, we
Yeah.
recognize that. We notice, oh yeah, there's something we recognize. We're primed to recognize when things are off. You know, because that's why we're all still here. Because we've been managed. You know, we've managed just about to get through, and so we're primed to be vigilant to where there's something in that person that's presenting but isn't quite, you know, truthful, or something that they're hiding, or some quality about them that doesn't feel, yeah, or that feels kind of
Yeah.
uncompleted. So
Completely. Yeah.
yeah, what you noticed was exactly what we want, you know, that feeling of like, I saw somebody, but there was something.
Yeah. So, and do you know what? An image is coming to me. You've seen The Godfather, right?
Yes.
Yeah. You're the first scene where the camera just slowly moves out and you just see Marlon Brando just appearing in the screen. He's got his hand on his chin like that. Even we don't see his face, but there's just something about that gesture and he's doing that. And like you, of course, like people see in The Godfather, he's a symbol of power, he's a symbol of like the leader of the household and stuff like that. But in one shot, one little gesture like that, and of course, like
What
the
does it
body.
say to you, that gesture? Like, what do you feel like personally when you see that, without worrying about getting it right?
Yeah, that's a good question. For me, it showed power and
And what kind of power?
like this is my domain. You know, you're on my turf now. You play by my rules, and you know, and it just his aura. And of course, that's another thing for today's energy. The body radiates an energy about it, and you know, I did a lot of work with Michael Chekhov. Well, not with Michael Chekhov, but working on Michael Chekhov
Oh, yeah.
technique, which you radiate out the energy from your solar plexus, but then again from oh god, we were taught by someone called Grania. She's going to kill me. Sorry if you're listening
Yeah.
to this. A point of what's it called? Is it a point of focus or a center? Oh god, she's going to kill me. Anyway, so it's like a point of
I'm
focus.
not going to kill you because I can't remember.
But it's like a point of attention in the body where you radiate out your energy, and that energy then fills the whole room. And just his energy in that moment, Brando just had this unbelievable like control over the room, and this feeling that if you just say one thing out of line here, I'll kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he does all
And
that.
also, even as you say that, that kind of, there's not loads of energy wasted of like, if you say, it's just this dropping of like, that this is a fact.
Yeah,
No, I own this. And what an amazing, I was thinking as you were describing that kind of first opening shot and what you feel, there's something about also the film kind of going, you, this is, you know, the film being a bit like, this is what it is. Like, we're gonna, you know, in a kind of artistic expression of what it is as well. It's not going to try and make you like it or try and entertain you. It's like, it's straight down the line.
yeah. So how much of animal studies is sort of incorporated into your work?
Not really. I wouldn't say. I mean, I do genuinely watch animal documentaries or thing, and I love it. I really love it. I love it for the drama. It's so dramatic.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I know they hype it up now, but just seeing kind of relationship and, you know, and how people kind of, and people, how animals navigate life. It's pretty tough for most animals,
yeah,
but I wouldn't study it like a kind of intellectual academic way. But I definitely, there are animal qualities, if you like, within us as humans, as human animals, but also there are many similarities or and but I'm kind of cautious, or not cautious. I don't overly invite it onto an actor because it may not be their process. But sometimes you can kind of offer it as an idea of like, does anything come to mind as you think about this? You know,
yeah,
it's more open rather than
yeah,
going, because I think some people can then worry that there's a kind of a methodology that they don't have or they
yeah,
haven't studied,
yeah,
and then you're in a whole different ballpark. Whereas actually, I just find it curious, really. But I love how how animals fight and how they kind of navigate what's safe, what's not.
Yeah. Yes. No, the reason I ask is that another one there is, well, I've talked about this before actually. You've seen Silence of the Lambs?
Yeah.
Yeah, that opening shot of Anthony Hopkins, and I mentioned animal study because I heard somewhere that he looked at tarantulas.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if it's true, but I just read this somewhere that he studied tarantulas, or
Mm,
watched how just and then that's another thing as well. When we talk about Chernobyl in just a moment, is that you've got the Crucible, which is like again Act Three, like wild movements, this big bang of energy in the room, and then suddenly you've got something like Chernobyl or Silence of the Lambs, where you've got
it's like,
it's like, yeah,
yeah,
exactly that. And then,
yeah,
so if anyone who hasn't seen it, just Anthony Hopkins' energy is just, I mean, that's why so many people just see him as Hannibal Lecter now, really. But
yeah.
his energy in that is so palpable and so intense and so clear more than
Mm,
anything. And I remember the first time I watched it, I remember a shiver just went straight through me
mhm.
because I was like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, yeah,
And,
yeah.
and of course he was a psychopathic serial killer, but
And in a way, thank God that goes through you, right? Because you're even able to go, whoa, that's disturbing, And an actor has the ability to be able to cause a physical reaction in you. Like,
yeah, and boy, did he do it. Did he do it?
yeah, I saw another very powerful, powerful, extraordinary film the other day, a
Mm.
screening of The Cook, the Thief, his wife and his lover,
Yeah,
by Peter Greenaway. Do you know that film?
I haven't yet, but I'll look out for it. Yeah,
Holy shit. I mean, it's a piece of art.
yeah.
It
What was
and
it called again?
it's
Sorry.
let me quote it right. The cook, the
Yep,
thief,
yep.
his wife and his lover.
His wife and his
I
lover.
mean, it's not an easy watch, but and Peter Greenaway.
Okay, Peter Greenway.
And it's extraordinary. It's Michael Gambon in the early, it's shot in 1989, I think,
Oh
roughly,
wow.
and Helen Mirren, kind of one of her first. And it's an extraordinary piece where somebody is Michael Gambon plays a character who is kind of just vile, like totally and utter in all areas, vile from beginning to end without stopping.
Wow.
And in a way, it's just got something that the darkness in that and what he says, what he does, it's relentless. And in a way, there's something so kind of profound in really having a visceral experience towards this character, to how he just yeah, I don't even have words to describe it, but it's an extraordinary, it's a piece of art. It's an
Mm,
extraordinary piece of cinematic
nice.
art, and there are many things I really loved about it, and many things I found very disturbing. But I, we're talking about art. I want to be disturbed. I want to
Yeah.
be, and I mean disturbed, i.e., thinking what disturbed actually means. It means to disrupt, disturb something.
Mm,
I don't necessarily want to be traumatized. It's different, but it's like, but I want my system to be reactive and react, because
mm,
otherwise, what am I doing there?
yeah.
Because art is a provocation. It should be a provocation. It's a political act,
Yeah.
however you want to see it.
Yeah. Talking of art and political acts, that's a very good segue
My
onto
favorite subject.
Chernobyl. Yeah, it's a very good segue onto Chernobyl, actually. And, I just want to get this in now, just from a personal point of view. It's one of the best, one of the top series out there. It's just brilliant. I mean, and big shout out to all the creators, and of course to yourself,
Yeah.
Imogen, as well for
Thank you.
for helping you. The way, obviously we'll get on to how you work with the actors in just a moment, but the way that you worked with them, how you crafted it, just phenomenal work, Imogen. So congratulations on
Thank you.
that. It's just brilliant. And if anyone hasn't watched it, go and watch it right
Mm,
now. It's 5 episodes, and honestly, it's some of the best TV you'll ever watch. It's just brilliant.
mm.
But yeah, so we'll get on to like the politics of everything around it in just a moment. But you mentioned there about the political side of it, and of course, it's based on the Chernobyl disaster of 1986. It was I think Gorbachev himself even wrote in his book that was the true collapse of the Soviet Union when it all went completely down the pan. And it's funny enough because the power plant erupted. Well, it blew up as a result of a safety test. I mean, talk
Yeah.
about irony, huh? I mean, and yeah, so political act, how that happened, the way the government tried to cover it up, and now
Oh,
people
yeah,
search
that's
for
most
truth. Yeah,
devastating.
yeah. I mean, particularly without giving too much away, there's a big spiel at the in the last episode, basically, of what happened and like these real life characters and what happened. But anyone who hasn't seen it, go and watch it. It's just brilliant. So we
Yeah.
might touch on a few spoilers, guys. Just letting you know. So yeah. So tell me about how did you first hear about the job, Imogen? How did you get involved?
I was contacted by Sister Productions,
Hmm.
um, Jane Featherstone at the time, I believe, and kind of asked to come in. Was I don't actually even, my God, see what I mean? I've said at the beginning of this, my memory is a bit like,
Don't worry.
"Uh," but I think we had a chat. That's it. We had a meeting and a chat about it. And I think what was really interesting at the time, of course, in retrospect, it's been very well received, and it meant a lot of things to a lot of people. But often in these very early conversations, you're talking about this kind of, not it's not a small idea, but it was a TV kind of exploration series, and there was obviously some risk in a way, or a sense of going, we're doing this with mostly British cast, or
Mm.
and they're not having accents, or they're going to kind of speak
Yeah,
how they
yeah, yeah.
speak. And so there's a few things that could be quite could not kind of really fly. There's a few things that might really be quite disjointed or something.
Mm.
Anyway, that was a tiny kind of part of it, but really what they were asking for was some work with each of the actors individually, to explore what their more Soviet body language is. Like at the beginning, we were talking about like how we express ourselves with people who we have no necessarily cultural affiliation with, or and and so yeah, it was about how can we give each actor this kind of time to explore, because it might be also something that they were concerned about, going, oh, do I have to, do I have to have an accent? Do I have to kind of, in a way, do too much acting, like put too many layers in front of one's performance?
Mm.
And yeah, the production company were just really interested in that, in how to ground them all in kind of more Soviet rather than British gestures, or in even just knowledge about how that culture at the time, how they express themselves. And of course that sounds like a huge generalization, but just small things that actors are amazing at taking and kind of ingesting, and then allowing it to kind of integrate into their performance. Like that's
Mm.
what actors are amazing at. And so I worked with each. I had a kind of either in person. I did a lot of in person meetings, and then some on Zoom because people were in different places in the world.
Sure.
But with each actor, so I had many meetings, put it that way. Like I can't quite remember how many, but it felt like I don't know, but it felt like I saw about 20 to 25 individual kind of meetings,
Nice.
quite intense.
Yeah.
And also we looked at kind of like how much you use how much eye contact, and really more subtle things. what is what are gestures, like what kind of not even what kind of gestures, but why gestures aren't as common, as we're much more free often in this, the kind of more British way. It's more
Mhm.
gesticular.
Yeah.
And then we also look, yeah, exactly. And there's a lot more freedom in the shoulders and the upper body, and eye contact and things like that, and proximity as well to other people, and contact. And then we also looked at any of the characters who were then going to suffer burns,
Mm.
and we did some much kind of more deeper work on pain and and shock, I guess, in the system. So the system's in shock, and it's also burning. I mean, it's
I,
terrific.
I mean, yeah.
But how they could also, the thing I love about working like this, and especially with working with film, is that, or TV, is that, you know, it's so great when actors can have that time before cameras and costume and makeup and all the other kind of incredible things, but they have to manage, and they have time before to really kind of drop in and micro work, if you like, or macro work, but their own kind of responses, their own maybe questions, but also their own instinct about stuff that doesn't feel like, oh, well, quick, because you've got to get on set in a minute. So there sometimes is a bit like, oh, just pick the quickest thing that comes. And so it gives them that real time to explore. And we really explored, and I would play sound in the room. Like, it was quite creative. It didn't feel like, I mean, sometimes it was a more discussion based, but we'd then always check in with the body. So how would that be in your body?
Yeah.
Also considering the age that person was, or the age that the character was, and what their status was. We did a lot of status work as well, and gender as well. And so it was more like that, and it was also about where the character is kind of leaning. Like, what do they come in wanting a bit more information about? What do they want to explore? And every actor works differently. So that was a kind of great opportunity for me to really explore. Well, Jared Harris likes to work in this way, or Jessie Buckley works in this way, or they really respond to different things. So it felt kind of great in that way to meet all these different actors who all cared so deeply about getting it right, because it's a true story, and it's got such a kind of traumatic history about it that everyone involved really cared, like really wanted to get it right, wanted to do it to honor it.
Yeah. I think I remember because there's as a result of this they did the Chernobyl podcast, and they had, I think
somebody told me about that the other day.
Yeah. I think it's the writer is it Johan? I think it is.
Johan Renck, the director.
Yeah, no, the creator and the writer,
sorry.
Nick. Oh God, I'm so sorry, Nick, if you're listening. But
I'm so sorry, Nick.
Yeah, Nick. Oh no, is it Nick? No, Craig.
Craig
Mazin. Craig Mazin.
Craig.
Yeah.
I told Oliver at the beginning of this chat that, like, I have a real fear of forgetting people's names and not being able to name check.
Yeah.
So apologies.
I've just done it myself, so don't worry about it.
Apologies, because you're in my heart, but I'm not
in our
so
hearts, guys. We love you. Sorry for listening. But there's one episode actually with Craig and Jared, actually, who said, I think, because he said that one thing that they adopted from the beginning was, like over here in Britain, if someone goes, if you walk up to someone, you go, I'm not sure which way it was, but you go, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" So you put your head down. Whereas in Soviet Russia, they do this. They lift their head up. So it's just those tiny little things.
It was exactly those things, and also where is eye contact, and kind of even how wide their stance is. It's like, it's so different from people who live in cities. Like nowadays, it's like sometimes the stance is smaller because there's less route, almost like, and everything is more vertical. Whereas if you're more country based or outside based, you're going to have like kind of, which sound very straightforward, but it's also just really great for an actor just to, if it's different from their own way, how can they just explore where it feels right for them as well? So it's not like they're having to, they can still be them, but how can they just either do a little less, do a little more, have a slightly different, stance, or have a kind of feeling that there's a lot of, there's a coldness about the body or whatever, so it's very creative, and actors will often come with some kind of subconscious sense of what they want to explore anyway.
Yeah. And it's like just those little things that I've, as I said there, just like lifting your head up instead of like looking down, and immediately you get a sense of, because it all starts in the body, and, just before we get on to something else in Chernobyl, it's one of the quotes that I've got here from yourself, from the Stage article. It says, we're talking specifically about British culture. You go, our culture is so heady, especially in the theatre. It comes from text and understanding, which is all well and good, but we can only speak because we feel something. Words come second in life, and that's absolutely true. We speak because we feel something.
Yeah, it starts in our gut, in our organs, and then it like literally comes up through the breath, and you create, you're creating breath to express it. It then has an interesting journey around here, whether it should be a direct expression, or sometimes there's ways of altering it slightly, and then it
Yeah.
comes into mouth, throat, words. So but everything starts in the body, in the organs, and goes through ultimately to start. So, and in a way, what we want with anyone is for them to feel the impulses in the body in order for the words to really connect.
Yeah.
You want that through line.
Yeah. You want the through line to sort of see why that happens. Do you know, just very quickly, did you work with, of course, you worked one-on-one with Paul Ritter
Yeah.
as well? Yeah, who played, I'm going to get the name, it's right there, Dyatlov.
Yes.
Control room, and sadly Paul's no longer with us as well, but
Yeah.
I have to admit his performance in that was, from my opinion, I think that was one of his best. He was superb as Dyatlov, primarily because I wanted to kill him. I wanted to kill him.
Yeah.
I want to be like, do you have any idea what you're doing? You're literally about to kill millions of people simply because you want a promotion, and
Yeah.
with no care about the fact that the safety test was ruined. And next thing you know, you've created a moment in human history that will last forever. And so many people look back on this.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to know how, when you worked with him, because his character was all about telling lies. He was a pathological liar. You couldn't tell the truth. It was all about, for him, trying to find the best possible way to wriggle himself out of a nearly impossible situation. So how did you work with him, particularly when you've got a character who is a liar and does everything he can to not tell the truth?
Well, in honesty, I don't have a kind of a big memory about it specifically with him, but like there was definitely something about holding, and also a lot of people in that story are holding information or holding back from going, wait a second, is
Yeah.
something. So there's a whole, a kind of, what do you do if you're trying, can you hold something and yet, where is it that's, yeah, I'm always interested in that. Like, what part of the body, or how do you hold back and go kind of stiller so that your body doesn't give you away, or and I mean, yeah, and it's in it a kind, and also, the fact that that person, that character, was so kind of self-driven, like the kind of eye on the prize,
Mm.
compared to all of this. Like, it's like avoidance, isn't it? You're avoiding a whole, um, well, you're avoiding the truth, but you're for self kind of gratification, or your own journey.
Mm.
Um, and people know when they're doing that.
Yeah. So a liar knows they're lying, but they don't
Yeah,
want
but we're incredible at being able to mask and convince and deny and avoid.
to. Mm.
Um, and it the the system will contract around that to hold that. And of course, it can contract for a lifetime, unfortunately, but it can
Yeah.
also start showing.
Mm.
It shows obviously also in behavior
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in all ways.
Yeah. But like we said there, it's like there was a sense of, with Paul, you could see a holding, you could see
Mm.
like particularly afterwards, because there's scenes where he's in the hospital and he's
Yeah.
recovering, and those scenes where he's like, I wasn't there. I didn't tell him to do that. No, no, what you're saying is complete horseshit. I'll just get the fuck out of my room. And
Mm.
that character is so spiteful and so rude in this, honestly.
Yeah.
But that's a sign of a great actor,
Yeah,
which he is. I know he's not here, but he is still a great actor.
absolutely. His
And
performance lives on. And you had I love that your response is exactly that, like visceral. I wanted to, even
yeah,
though it's a character and of course it was based on a real person, but it's like you had a visceral response to
mm,
how someone was acting,
yeah,
operating.
yeah,
I love
yeah.
that. It's how it should be, right?
Exactly, yeah. No, well, thank you. And it's one thing that like I said, we said about earlier about the Crucible, like the big movement, the big outlay of energy, the subtleness and stuff. But then suddenly, when you worked with the guys who who had the burns, who had the horrific burns and radiation wounds and sickness after that. And suddenly there's a scene in episode 3, I think it is, where again, I'm forgetting the character's name, but she goes to see Toptonov in the hospital, and he's there, and he says, "I'm the senior person at nuclear power plant." She says, "Senior engineer." Well, how old are you? I said, "I'm 25."
Yeah.
And he's there covered in like blisters and everything. I mean, the makeup department as well. Big shout out to them.
Yeah.
They did an incredible job.
Mm.
And so, how did you approach characters like that who are just lying there completely still, and you think they're not doing anything, but they're actually doing a lot more than you think, just being
Yeah.
in that stillness. So how do you work with people who need to be still?
Well, stillness is usually, well, it depends what the stillness is, but in that situation, it's probably, a kind of freeze and shock in this, profound shock in the system. So there's a kind of stillness, but underneath that stillness is complete turmoil, or is like, so the stillness has a very particular charge. It's like you can tell when somebody is like frozen or in a freeze state compared to when they're just still and being. There's a very, you can feel it as another human animal. So it's not like someone is just lying there kind of going, well, I haven't got any, I haven't got any lines that much and makeup's doing it all. You have to, you embody that whole experience. And like I said, they all cared so deeply about not over kind of the story is traumatic enough in itself.
Mm,
So something about the economy of holding something, you hold it with respect to. So it's almost like you don't need to do too much, but you just need to hold the charge of what's happening in your body, and we feel it.
mm,
Um, that's sometimes the key. It's like finding that beautiful, and it's different for every single person and every single character and everything. But where's the radar? Like, where are the edges for that person? And are they
mm,
very narrow or are they more expansive? But and and where do they kind of undulate?
mm.
Um, so yeah, but I think shock in the body is something that is you can really work that because you just kind of you can tighten everything, you can lock everything, you can tell your system to become more in a state of freeze rather than dead, because dead is kind of dead, but in a state of freeze. So you can really work that. And I know, and I've studied for another part of my interest in life, and another part of what I do is I'm really interested and drawn towards the nervous system and
Mm,
how how it operates and what happens. And therefore I have thankfully the interest and the language to be able to help people, give it words, name it a bit more so they can actually really access it
mm.
if they need that. Sometimes they just naturally know because we're all human animals.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just and again in that scene later, the interview finishes, and then it cuts to there's like a wide shot where you see the full extent of Topsonov's injuries, and
Yeah.
the skin blisters. I mean, Jared Harris has that wonderful moment in one of the episodes where he talks about in such eloquent detail about what happens. The skin blisters, the bone
Yeah.
marrow dies. The organs and soft tissue begin to decompose. And within 3 days to 3 weeks, you're dead.
Yeah.
And I think, but why I say that is that the actor who played Toptonov, yeah, that I'm not sure was this you as well, where she's just leaving the room and he sort of turns around and he does a thing with his breath and he goes, and he has that moment where you sort of see like the reaction to what's happening. Maybe something's starting to happen. Maybe there's a
Yeah.
pain. There's a pain inside. You can hear
And that could
it.
even be when the shock coming through, or like suddenly the breath is able to move, even though it's completely disjointed and
Yeah.
completely off. It's like something is kind of starting to erupt, which maybe it couldn't do in present.
Mm.
If you give something away by your breath, your breath is so
Yeah. But it's that scene in particular. You see everything, and the speech as well, because like you said there about it comes from a place of suddenly realization, and then it comes out in the breath, and then you're trying to figure out why am I feeling this way, and it's like, well, maybe you topped enough in that point, knew what had happened, and slowly come into the thought of it, of what's happening. Yeah, but I just want to
mm,
mention Jessie Buckley as well, because she had one scene in particular where she they kept saying, "Do not go inside the plastic. Do not go inside the plastic." That's where they were because it's supposed to keep the radiation out. But then one sheet of plastic keeping out radiation is probably not do too much, I suppose. But it was the Soviet
yeah.
Union, so anything they said goes, really. Uh, and she went in, and her lover, who had, oh, do you remember the scene where the makeup that he had on, where his skin is literally just turned black? And
Yeah.
I remember watching that for the first time, going, "Hey, okay,
Yeah.
yeah." Was that what was like your process on that, where he's literally to the point where the words just can't even come out, and
Mhm.
it's just noise at this point.
What do you remember? Who was the actor who played that? Do you know?
I'm sorry, I don't know his name. Sorry.
No, and nor do I right now. And I'm not, again, some people who, anyway, um, but it's more, I guess it's also in what Jesse sees and, that how that character sees that and also that complete, I mean, it's unimaginable, isn't it? How to witness somebody, knowing them as a lover, as your partner and in their full aliveness, and then seeing a version where either they're dead or they're so close to death, but their body is completely
It's not their
different.
body anymore. It's
No.
something else now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't kind of have a memory of, I don't know, I have loads of memories of different, but I did, because I worked with everyone individually and it was all it's kind of intense on the moment. So it wasn't like I wouldn't say I staged anything. It's not like, but it's almost like I staged or helped them stage the inside.
Mm,
And then they did their amazing work
mm,
on set. But it's things like that, though, isn't it? It's like it's how to hold a stillness or a close to deathness, which, they're having to also use their imaginations because
mm.
hopefully none of these actors have had that direct
Yeah,
experience.
exactly.
So we're we're using kind of artistic license, but also historical fact, but also allowing, we're feeling we're feeling human animals, and so we understand what it might feel like to be burnt. There is something we intrinsically can go there, or actors can go there especially, but that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of someone portraying something that we won't have been able to see in real time, of course, thankfully, but that they can really create what almost feels documentary,
Mm.
which is so important for anything that has a real historical, um, what's the word? Truth.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so, like, similar sort of thing, there's the brilliant scene actually in the final episode where Jared Harris talks to the court about how a nuclear reactor works, and he's got that board up with all the different, it's like the red signs and the blue signs.
Yeah.
It's like, this is uranium, the water checks it, blah, blah, blah. So how did you work with him sort of keeping that, because, it's a long scene for Jared. I mean, he had so much to do. Like, but having said that, he kept my attention absolutely
Mhm.
fixed the whole time, and actually I had to rewatch that scene about 5 or 6 times to sort of I was so engaged, but I was trying to figure out like how it all worked together and stuff. So how did you guys approach that scene where you've got a big scene with a lot of facts and a lot of science, but you want to keep the audience completely fixed? So how did you manage to do that?
Well, like I said, I didn't work directly on like scenes,
Yes.
but it was more about, and he's a brilliant actor and it has his own kind of process with anything. So it was really about with each person kind of getting what what their inner world, inner landscape feels like.
Mm.
And and it's also thanks to the writing that also and his performance and the way, the whole kind of setup of it that really keeps you and also the whole series had this way that felt there was something about the chemistry of it, the intensity of it that you just dropped into it as a
Mm.
viewer, I found like it. And that's sometimes I just think that's chemical compounds, just all feeling like they're all going towards the same end. And we don't often know where the end is, but everyone's focused and everyone has the same, and I would also say same amount of care, real focus, real dedication, care to committing to something, but also really importantly, not to kind of over dramatize something that is already doesn't need convincing.
Yeah.
You don't need bells and whistles. It's like there's something really assured about a true story. It's a bit like, have you seen Adolescence?
Yeah. Yeah.
There's something that really is a piece of art because in a way, it brings in there's some really clear factors that they used, continuous shot, real time, and a true story, based on a true story, I believe. And in a way, they just committed to it. So it feels like when I watched it, I just dropped into the existence of it. I didn't, and I'm not, they're very different pieces, but there's something about it that has this, it just chemically it works. That's all I can say sometimes. Somehow the chemical compounds of a piece of work, whether it's TV, theatre, art, music, seem to just all come together and kind of create the explosion, and even if it's a long simmer explosion, but
Yeah.
they all do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, it's like I feel like it also happens in the time it's released in the world. Like all those things feel like they go towards it. Like great pieces of work have been made, and somehow they haven't quite picked up, which doesn't mean they're any less great or successful, but
Yeah. Yeah.
because of the time they came, sometimes it's like, and and then later on they're recognized for their brilliance, but they were still brilliant. It just,
Mm.
um, I'm a real champion for something being, what is success?
Mm.
Has it had all the components to make it something? It doesn't. The end result doesn't need to be everyone loves it and it's the most, wins tons of awards. That's great,
Mm.
but it's like, was the production did it do what it was set out to do? That's the most
Yeah.
important thing.
Yeah. And ultimately, it's about creating art which is meaningful and
Right.
something that A, you're passionate about, and B, tells a story which
Yeah.
resonates with a lot of people. And my God, what a story!
Yeah.
What a story! I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I
It's a
think
bit also like when something's historical. Did you see Tell No One recently,
I haven't as of yet, no, but
about the history
definitely,
of Ireland and England? But there was something about that again. It was a historical fact, right? But it was done really beautifully. It's got Maxine Peake in it, who I know because I know her. But it's historical fact, but it's done with such care and such
yeah,
diligence and rigor and emotion. And I was hooked. And it's the same thing. Like you come out of an experience like that, knowing more. You're more, you've. But it also feels very like that piece of work for me didn't feel like it was what's the word, like rose tinted, looking at the English,
rose tinted spectacles, yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
not really looking at the English with any rose tinted anything,
Oh,
which is what a lot of, if you live in England or anywhere, but is what you often get with
yeah,
Ireland. And so that felt to me really engaging in the same way. I was being educated, and being, it's a piece of beautiful making. And it felt like the intention there was really clear of like, nothing needed over dramatization or, too much music or, a dance number in the middle. Like I'm all for dance numbers in the middle, but they
Yeah.
have to earn their place.
Yeah. I don't think Chernobyl was the right thing for a dance break, but
No,
no, it'll be hard to squeeze in one of those in there.
totally. Yeah.
Yeah, radiation. No, no, let's
Yeah.
not go there. Let's not go there. That would be weird. But actually, just one final thing on Chernobyl. Actually, is that you mentioned earlier working
Pouring
on.
water.
Yeah,
Go for it.
is that you mentioned in the rehearsal room, so that you would play music. You had the same track on repeat a lot when you were in the rehearsal room with the guys at the Old Vic.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, which song was that
At the old
for the
for the
Crucible? Yeah,
Crucible.
yeah.
That was, oh, it might have been a piece by a very old piece, which I've never weirdly been able to find again, which is so weird. But it may have been a piece called something like 7 Days
Hmm.
by maybe John Hopkins, maybe. But it was a piece, it was a kind of cello piece, but it was had a very cyclical, a very kind of looped quality.
Mm.
And weirdly, I've never been able to find it again, which is odd in itself. So we had that piece. I think it was that piece. And we also had a piece that Yaël had brought that was just a voice going, like, I'm not going to do a good demonstration, but it's just a voice kind of almost breathing out like, and that
Wow,
is what we had every day. And it
wow.
was so, like, I remember it deeply in my cells, in my viscera.
Yeah,
Um, but it also helps the brain. It kind of helps you come in because you kind of orient to it. You go, oh yeah, it's, and as much as it might, I don't know if it gets annoying, but it becomes part of the fabric. So you're not constantly having different music, and that can be useful for other stuff to change dynamic. If you need to change dynamic in a room, you
mm,
can do that with different sounds, of course. But with this, we wanted to constantly, it's almost like stepping down into the water, like one rung at a time, and you needed to keep stepping down until
mm,
you're at the bottom of the sea. So
mm.
you need the same sound to encourage you and kind of accompany you.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. No, because I asked that because you had the music of the fantastic Hildur as well. Hildur.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to try and pronounce her surname because I'm going to absolutely butcher it. But yeah, but Hildur, she did the music for, she's done quite a few things, but one she did it for Joker as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the music in that, oh my,
No, she's amazing. I actually went to see her perform live a few weeks ago at the Southbank, and
yeah,
it was beautiful. Like, she's an extraordinary composer.
yeah,
And she, from what I gathered from the performance, and because she spoke a bit, is she cares what she puts her work to. Um, and yeah, and I think Chernobyl was one of the first kind of major, as far as I'm aware, but major kind of pieces that she became the
yeah,
score for.
yeah.
But I knew her work before that just as I kind of really interested in that kind of type of work. So I was really familiar with her work. And then I was like, oh, and she's doing the sound for this. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have access to the music while you were working with the actors?
I think I did actually. Not necessarily the music that was, but I had access to
Yeah,
her work from
like
the
like
past.
original drafts before it
Yeah.
became the final version. Yeah.
Not maybe not no nothing that was for the show, but her older albums
I
and
see.
work that I'd always known. So, and it has a very, it's a really beautiful, it's very atmospheric. It always yeah, it's really mesmerizing, her work. And that again, that is another piece of the kind of chemistry that seemed to come together. The work, the sound, the
Mm,
production design, the creative direction, the makeup, the actors, like the whole thing felt like like I keep doing this. It kind of felt like
yeah,
it moved together.
yeah.
Um,
And it's just like this. Yeah, the music helped with that as well. It's like the stillness of it. I mean, one moment in particular when you see the, I think it's the end of episode 3, where you see them burying the guys who were the firefighters, and of course they're not. Of course, these guys had radiation burn, so they're not buried in the traditional way. They were put in these metal coffins, which were um, sealed shut, and then they were thrown into a ditch and then covered in concrete. And it just, and there's that
yeah,
eerie scene where you see I remember watching it for the first time. You see this cement mixer just driving up the hill, and I'm going, "What's that doing here?"
Yeah.
And then you see what happens. But the music in that was like this slow, still pace. And now thinking about it now, it was this feeling of what is going on? What is this? But it's reality literally smacking you in the face, and you're going, what's going on?
Mm.
Why is this happening? And
Yeah. And what
yeah,
an amazing response. That's a really, what is going on? Like, it shifts kind of, yeah, those such traumatic events shift a paradigm in our sense of the world and what we know of it. Like, how is that possible? And it's obviously still happening today. And it's like,
mm,
how is it, how are those things all part of this horrific? And with anything horrifying, there's always kind of anomalies or strange, there's things that you would never believe
mm,
are possible,
yeah,
human to human. But in terms of, yeah, yeah,
yeah. I think just to finish on Chernobyl, there, I think it's one of Jared's lines where he says, "You are dealing with something that has never occurred on this planet before."
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. What a series!
yeah,
What a series!
yeah,
Also,
and just the gravitas of that, and how and how I also remember the kind of the crazy human scrambling
mm,
of trying to protect the self, or and kind of and where you see kind of distorted distorted behavior
mm,
of looking after the self and trying to kind of secure your career whilst the fucking world is blown, is on fire.
yeah,
It's making sure you've got your and we see that a lot.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, Imogen, we could probably talk about Chernobyl for ages, but
And I'm so impressed if you're not. I mean, like it's funny sometimes when you work on something, I definitely don't. I actually don't I sometimes don't watch things, not in any, but it's kind of done. So your knowledge on it is amazing. I'm like, oh God, it's so nice to hear how something can really, really affect somebody,
yeah,
and that, and I really appreciate that. That's exactly what it should do, right? Anything
yeah, yeah.
well
Oh, well,
made.
yeah, yeah. Well, no, no, it's a testament to your incredible work on this as well. How you helped with the actors. I'm sure they took every note that you gave them and used that on the.
Maybe.
Well, I'm sure they did. So
Thanks
that
for that.
because they're there in front of the camera, they're remembering what the director said, remembering what Imogen said, and delivering their fantastic performances, which
Yeah,
you helped to create. And
thank
it's
you.
it's an amazing, amazing piece of work. And of course the final line is just brilliant. What is the cost of lies? What and it's in
Yeah,
that case, it's just unfathomable. That it's just enormous. It's enormous
yeah,
what happens. And again, it's a piece of art which
yeah.
asks questions and changes the fucking world. And I'm going to keep saying that because it's true.
And that's what it
Honestly,
should do. It should change you know, our perspective. It should alter us in some way. We should be disturbed and therefore altered, changed, moved,
mm,
more empathetic, anything, but you should feel something.
mm. And
Mm,
you definitely made a lot of people feel something with this thing. And
great.
again, just huge congratulations to yourself on this and a lot of your work. I could literally keep you for another 2 hours, Imogen. I've still got so many more things left to talk to you, but yeah, I'd love to have you back. I've got questions about King Lear and some of your work in
Mm,
opera and music as well, but we'll get to that at another point. So yeah, absolutely love to have you back for another one in the future. Um,
yeah.
but just got a final few more things left for you
Yeah,
today.
do it.
So one quote, just going back to the stage article, just for a second, you said, I wouldn't say I necessarily had a style. I'd say my style is my process." What did you mean by that?
Yeah. I guess the sense is I really value process, and I really value that a process is different with any with whatever group you're working with, because it's different from the last group or individual. So I value the process and the openness of what it could be. And so in that, I also like slightly precipice living, which is, or making, where I don't I don't plan what I'm going to do with people before
Yeah.
I've met them, because in my brain I just, one, can't. I might write like, oh, we might start with this, and then literally you see my work pad or whatever, and I just kind of dribble out. It's like, oh, nothing, because I haven't met them. So I have no, why would I, in my, how I work in my brain, why would I conjure up something before I've kind of met them and kind of, yeah. And I mean, when I say meet them, I mean them in all senses. Um, and then as soon as I do meet them, of course, all of the pre-work that I've been doing, all of the kind of influences, or the way I've been kind of looking for things or finding things or having things come in my way, come into fruition, because then I'm like, now it has an outlet. So I trust a process, even though in a way what's quite exciting and funny is that often I don't, or I trust that something will come in, because I've done it for long enough, but also because I trust in the moment. I trust what's happening right there in the moment, where the sparks are. So I guess there's a kind of, the practice is continuously practicing that, like, and sometimes that's really hard, because sometimes I'm like, shit, I hope I can kind of bring something. So it's not like it always just like flows effortlessly, but I also like it when there's sometimes a break, and my head's like, oh, okay, fuck, because actually that's interesting. Then you've got some, like, you're in the unknown, and you might have to soften a bit, or yeah, like it's like clay. It's like working with clay. It's like you have to, or like, yeah, like some bits melting over there, you kind of pick it up and melt it, but you don't know what it's going to make.
Yeah.
So but I think it's changed, of course, over the years. I really like change. I really like keep cultivating it. I never go in and do the same thing. And I might make it from the inside out. I do make it from the inside out. So from my inside out and their inside out. And we see what happens with that.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I would, it doesn't really make any, I don't know if that makes any sense, but it's like,
yeah, of course
that's kind of my approach. So I come with I do a lot of pre-thinking, and I would also say kind of really ingesting. So it's not just cognitive. It's not like, and sometimes I'm not massive. I don't overly read the script. I'm not, again, it's like the words thing. I'm like, it's there, but I'm not overly focused on it. And so it's more of, I need to, it's almost like I need to tee up my system to get in the zone of it, whatever that zone is. And then when I find the zone, I know it's almost like muscle memory. I know how to get in, and I know what the group responds to, and how to facilitate a room where people can really drop into themselves and drop into the work. And drop into a type of creativity that's based on real gut impulses, without too much filter.
Yeah.
Without too much, because the gut impulses will then inform the cognitive part.
Yeah. And it's just about that organic process to try and find how everyone works. Because like we said earlier, everyone is unique. Everyone has a unique way of moving. And it'd be silly to make prerequisites or preempt or assume beforehand how someone does it. Because ultimately you haven't seen them walk, you haven't seen them run, you haven't seen them, how they blink their eyes, how they scratch their head. I don't know, but just little things like that, really. But but I love that. That's a very brilliant process to have, and
it's like deciding, it's like deciding what the child will be like when they're an embryo.
Yeah, you can't decide that.
And having a kind of, they should be this. It's like trying, and in a way you notice that you're trying to push something into something. It's like, what happens if you let the authenticity of that being, and of course that person will have some qualities that are like the role they're playing, of course. And I often believe there's merging in that person. But how can you really kind of allow, kind of help the kindling of that continuously to burn so that
Mm,
they can really explore all the areas of that character, that person, without too much kind of cognitive chat about like, oh, but they wouldn't do that because da da da. Actually, just go with impulses and see what that explores, and then gradually you start to kind of sculpt and shape and find where truth really lands as well.
yeah, for sure. No, that's beautiful. It's a really profound way of looking at it and how we work as creatives all together in the space, whether you're the
Yeah.
actor or the creative team. It's amazing. It really, really is. I just want to go back to just got a couple more things left for you, Imogen.
Do it.
So your training, again, just going back to that for one moment. What
Yeah.
would you say was the difference between Imogen on day one of training and Imogen on the last day?
Well, interestingly, so I started at this dance school for 3 years in Leeds. It was amazing. But like I said before, it was amazing, and it was also the right time for the
Yeah.
age I was. Like I was fully committed to being fully committed. And I didn't yet have a kind of anarchic bone that I hadn't yet found my anarchy.
Okay.
So, but my anarchy was
Okay,
definitely
to
waiting
come.
in the wings. It was like primed animal. But I hadn't found it yet. So I was busy. Yeah, I was busy kind of cultivating and probably people pleasing, if you like, through what I was learning, which is, gave me that a lot of the kind of rigor. And then I went to a 4th year at London Contemporary Dance School. And then by this point, I think I definitely burnt out. So I was kind of burnt out technically wise because I was a technical dancer, but I also didn't have the kind of legs that went up to my ears, as in I had to really study. I had to really work hard, like technical and kind of real, what would you say? Like, where something comes, the kind of technical precision came so easily to some people, some bodies. And for me, I had to really work at it. I had to really, I worked at it so much that in a way, all the dance, any any movement that was my own was completely lost to me. I
Mm,
had no creative intuition, and I really felt it, and it was a kind of quite a scary moment because I really was like, oh, left to my own devices, I'm just going to do technique, because in a way that's all my body now knows, because it's programmed to do to have kind of high tension in the body or extremes in the body.
yeah.
It wasn't programmed to express anything emotional.
Mm,
So I had zero. Well, I thought I had zero. Then I went to my 4th year and I had a few knocks, like I didn't get into the company. There was a kind of company that I wanted to get into in a 4th year. So I went to a kind of another section of that, which is a training for another year. But it was a knock. It was a knock to I had been kind of built up to be this, to be kind of a successful kind of, everything will just pan out for you. You'll get in the company, then you'll do this. And I had a real knock there. And so I was in this kind of 4th year of training and repeating ballet and contemporary dance and doing the same lessons. But by this point, I think I was a bit like, "Ah." And I was also in a more slightly more creative kind of world where there was improv. And I hated improv because I was like, well, nothing comes, because I
mm,
was so technical and so kind of limited in my brain and how I thought about my body as well. I was kind of very rigid and very cruel on myself. So I was also, so when you're in that state, you're not relaxed, you're not finding curiosity and, oh, let's see what this is like. So I then was really confronted by the fact that I had no impulse coming from myself to create. And it was really horrible because I was like, oh, fuck. Well, what am I? Am I just, and I'm also not getting, I'm not the person in the company. I'm not, so I'm kind of back in training, but I don't have anything to offer. Anyway, and then I remember going to some improv classes, thinking that as I was in a dance school, improv should be dance. And then I found this one, well, I was in a class once, and I just kind of found this like more antagonistic, provocative side to me that was like, I'm not going to fucking dance. And I put my and I started to kind of almost become this character. And I remember at the time I had this like fake fur jacket and I put it on. And then I was like, I don't think I was really smoking, but I had a cigarette in my bag. So I had a cigarette out. And then I mean, it was early days, but ultimately what I knew looking back, what I was expressing was a kind of real fuck you to having to do anything, having to dance, having to people please. And I just found this kind of very anarchic character, and everything she did in that moment, in that class, was anti-dance. And I was in a fucking, I was like really, I was kind of exploring something that I'd never explored before, and I loved it. I was like, oh, this is really exciting for me. And I also suddenly felt the teacher actually I don't know how, but she made a comment that felt really encouraging of going, yeah, this is kind of interesting. Something's turning up. And I mean, she didn't say those words, but there was some encouragement of some expression of me that was coming out that was not technical shapes. And from that moment on, I was like, that's it. It's something. And it was early days, it was embryonic, but it was something about my inner motivation, something about the inner experience coming out and being there. And I wasn't speaking or anything. It was still kind of more but I was speaking a bit, and I was also able to join sound and speaking and movement and myself. And I remember feeling like, this is actually exciting. It's not deadening how dance and sadly had become quite deadening to me. And so I became a kind of anarchist about movement. And then all my movement kind of actually really developed. And I stopped wanting to be in kind of direct dance companies. I wanted to be in more experimental dance theatre companies. And I was much more, and so it was great. It was a real opening towards that. But I had to kind of die in dance before I found what I would say what I found movement was.
Yeah, brilliant. I love that journey. It's so natural and yet so profound, and you noticing things about yourself. And I think that's a brilliant thing about training, is that you notice things about yourself and you're like, oh, I didn't realize that was there. And then you realize why it's there, how you process it, good, bad, or ugly. And it's a journey. Life is creative. Well, like anything, it's a journey. It's a cliche, but it's true.
Absolutely. And I'm grateful. Of course, it's kind of a mixture, isn't it? Of course, you don't want something to be profoundly harmful to you, but it was definitely like an uncomfortable period, but it wasn't harmful. But at the same time, I'm also grateful because it's through the struggle I learned, and I had to find my voice. Like, it was kind of like I didn't really know what would happen to me with that. And there's then since then been different times where I've really had to find my own voice, from not having it, or by relationships completely destroying it, but you're continuously having to come back and find your true expression, which sounds so kind of, it does sound cliche, but it's like this struggle to find it is the piece that's most important.
It
shouldn't be easy to find it, because it needs kind of a real almost like feeling like if you don't find it, you'll die in some way. And that's what it felt like. And I've been in many situations, either through more creative work like that, where some part of me was dying and I didn't fucking know where to go, because I was like, I'm nothing's going on inside. And then through getting a bit older and having relationships where they're really this, somebody really tries to destroy your soul, and you
Yeah.
really get there, and then you have to find and pick your way out. And and if you can do that, keeping hold of some small light of self, you find a really more integrated way of your voice and your expression. And you become more grateful, because that's the struggle, takes everything. It's a real cost.
Yeah.
But to come through that is where you really,
Yeah.
it's really integrated into the body. It's not a kind of, it's not something you can't, there's a kid's book where you can't go under it, you can't go over it, you've got to go through it.
We're going on a bear hunt.
That's it.
Yep. Yeah. That's
And
one of my
it's the most
favorite.
beautiful thing to remember. You can't skip over that shit.
You got to go through it. Yeah.
You absolutely have to. And it may take you a lifetime. And of course it takes many lifetimes, but it may take you a number of iterations, relationship, something to do with, maybe early stuff in your childhood to career stuff to, you will constantly be challenged. And in a way, thank fuck, right? You should be constantly challenged to be able to stand up next to your own artistry,
Yeah.
next to, it's not an easy choice to be an artist.
No.
And it shouldn't be.
No. No, it's definitely not. No. God, that was like a masterclass on how to live the perfect life. That was great.
Wow.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. Imogen, I've just got two more things left for you today.
Do it.
So the final two questions for every guest. First of all, what would you say was a bit of advice that you wish you heard at the beginning of your career?
Well, this kind of goes to what I was just saying. I was like,
Yeah.
well, would I want advice? Because without that, without feeling quite alone and almost like desolate at many different stages, I wouldn't have been able to, find what I'm continuously finding, let's say. So in a way, that question can sometimes be like, if only somebody had made it easier for me in the beginning, the whole journey would have been easier some way. Like if somebody had given me advice, but that is because I don't necessarily want it to have been easier, but I think I would have kind of had something which was a bit like keep your nicheness, your way of being in the world, your like, it doesn't have to be first and foremost, because you want to be influenced by people and things and twist and turn so that you really find your own backbone. But you also want to have sometimes this still small voice that's like, that the things that you like, keep liking them. The things that you're drawn to, even if they're not what everyone else is drawn to, kind of know that they go deeper than you think.
Yeah. It's like keep your uniqueness and authenticity more than anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause there's only one of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's only one, and in a way, what you're pulled towards will often have a deeper significance in a number of months. Like there's things at play. And so don't shut anything down. It's a bit like inspiration. We get tons of ideas every day, or tons of things that we're drawn to. And of course, if we tended to every single one of them, we'd be nuts, but and never get anything done. But it's making sure that if an idea comes, just allow it to stay for a little longer, allow it, because it will be about something that it may not be that you need to literally make that idea, but it will be about it's inspiration, which is about an inhale. It's an inspiration means to inhale. And so it's like, allow it to be moving like breath. Don't shut things down too early, or shut things down because they won't be relevant. Like keep it all there, and kind of all there as your friends in your own world.
Your friends in our own world. Yeah. That's great. And just finally today, what would you say what's been an experience? Well, you probably answered this already, actually, but what would you say was an experience or experiences that you've had in your career up to now that you'll never forget?
Oh, what comes to mind quite early, um, like quite immediately, is I did a production called Amadeus,
At
and
the National?
yeah,
Yeah, I saw that. That was again amazing.
and
Amazing.
yeah, and again, that was one of those ones where we were kind of precipice making. We didn't know whether it was going to work. We had this orchestra, and it was the first time I'd ever worked with musicians. We had an orchestra moving potentially, and it was,
Mm,
so that was also like, is that even possible? We had a, huge big Olivier stage to work and make it, and we had the most extraordinary cast and the most extraordinary orchestra
yeah.
who ended up really blending as a company. They really blended, and it was really a profound thing. And I remember, though, feeling as we were making it, Michael Longhurst directing it, and Chloe Lampford designing, and myself doing the movement, that it was untouched territory. And I really remember it felt formative. It felt like it took a big step, like in what I still work with musicians now. Like I'm currently working with a number of different musicians on different things, but how to bring their work kind of more front and center, but in lots of different configurations. But it's because of that piece of work that I
Mm,
really grew a love of musicians and what it is they do and their capabilities and how to stretch the form, and how to manipulate the form a bit, or well, I don't like that word so much, but
yeah.
how to play with it and yeah, stretch it around a little bit and question it, and also not just lift up the stone a little bit and go, yeah, that's always been done like that. What would it be like if we offered this?
Mm,
I like lifting up stones and seeing what's there.
yeah.
Um, and at the same time honoring what they do, so it's not to disrupt what their utter skill, but actually to enhance it,
Yeah.
and make it more accessible in lots of ways as well. But so Amadeus is definitely one because of what it kind of it just everything about it felt like we came together to create something um, as a group of creatives at the time, with the most extraordinary music and a number of things. Like I most recently I did a piece of performance kind of installation with the director Sophie Hunter called the
Mm,
Salt of the Earth, and that was in Venice in a big salt warehouse with 40 tons of salt all over and six performers, I believe, and we created it over kind of 2 weeks, and with the writer Megan Hunter, and it was and with Isobel Waller-Bridge, and just kind of
mm,
with a live community choir as well that turn up, and it was an extraordinary piece of kind of moving art. And it was saying something about salt marshes and environmental awareness. And again, that was made with, yeah, there's something about the chemical compounds of everyone coming together. And often, again, with this piece, we didn't know what it was going to even fucking look like, be like. Was it going to be something that was just very staged, or was it going to be, and it was ended up being kind of site specific, like the performers were in different places, but with all this 40 tons of salt. So it was like a Tarkovsky image.
oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, it was beautiful and actually was really unknown in what it was as a form, but we made it. We made and felt like we kind of made something um, from nothing, from salt or from the ideas of salt and humans.
Yeah.
Um, so that really springs in my mind, and there are many and LeBlanc is another one where we really didn't know whether this circular Sheila Atim just circulating the stage was going to work, whether it was going to hold, and it really did, and the piece of work really kind of again felt like it challenged a form, and so it was not easy to make for a number of reasons, and it's a big piece to make, with
Mm,
a lot of context, and so that, yeah, and I mean I could go on, but I won't. But
mm,
and most recently, a piece that I really thoroughly enjoyed was piece of work I made in a more workshop form with the charity called Cardboard Citizens,
Hmm.
which works with people who've experienced homelessness and poverty.
Okay.
And I met them every Thursday afternoon for 2 months. And I worked also with my friend Matthew Herbert, he came every 2 weeks, and I was there every week. And we made over time much more about the workshops. Each week was just gathering, exploring movement, exploring some sound, things in their pockets that made sound. We made group sound, but over time, without it being focused on the production, or we weren't making a product, but without it being focused only on what we're going to show,
Mm.
we gradually built a kind of ritual. So it ended up being in Hoxton Hall, and everyone, audience and performers, sat in a circle with chairs, and it was all sound was made by the company. So there was no kind of theatre sound on top, but made through what Matthew recorded them make, and all their movement was their movement. And it became a kind of ritual. We created a ritual from what we explored every week. And I really liked the process. The process was really profound. Every week we gathered, and these are people with very complex trauma and complex lives, and
Mm.
they turned up every week, and
Wow.
we connected. And there are people who, and it was intergenerational as well. There was a 19-year-old to a 64-year-old, and they connected as a group, and um, different races, genders, orientations. So it was a really meaningful piece of work to make, and a very one that again feels like it connects to what I believe I want to put in the world, which
Mhm.
is where people come together and there is a kind of, we can feel a tangible chemistry, and what we make out of that will be what we make out of it.
Yeah.
Um, and I love that also with that piece, I know nothing about their story. Their maybe more difficult struggles were not the thing that made them interesting.
Mm.
As in, it's not the thing that we were mining. What we were working with was their resilience, their capacity for joy, their capacity to connect to each other, their capacity to look after each other and create a piece of art. And that felt really important to me, for a maker, but that it wasn't focused on this, on necessarily that we're not going to hear about their direct struggles. And so I made a piece of work with people I know very little about, but I know what they're like in a space.
Mm.
And that felt really important as well to,
Yeah. Bringing people together, and
yeah.
you're the salt of the earth.
And yeah, exactly. And they're the salt of the earth. They really are.
Yeah.
So that meant a lot to me. And that's the most recent thing. That's something I've done this year.
Yeah. Well, here's to many more experiences like that, for sure.
Yeah, amen. Amen to that.
Hey, freaking man, to that one. Imogen, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for your time
I'm
today.
so impressed with your knowledge about the Crucible and about Chernobyl. I'm like, fucking hell. So it was like I wanted to hear you talk about it all.
Yeah, we'll have time for that, and next time we'll definitely want to talk to you more about those two and King Lear, and of course some of your like newer work, and then talk about the Amadeus as well, working with musicians. And I know you do operas as well, but
Yeah.
honestly, we could sit here for another 2 hours, like I said earlier, just talking about all that.
I
But
might need a wee in that time. I mean, that's just
yeah,
like
and me,
bodily functions.
bodily functions and all
But I
that.
love your passion, Oliver, man. Like you really study things that you're drawn to. It's like, and
Yeah,
that's so like great. It's like you really invest in something that you enjoy and something
mm.
that you get a lot of pleasure from, but a lot of like pleasure in all facets.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, for sure. No,
great.
I just love this business. I love
Yeah.
being an actor. I love being a podcaster. And talking about acting and like on
Yeah.
all different facets of this industry. And just also like I feel like I want to shine a light on stuff, on roles which probably don't get noticed very much, like movement directors, like
Yeah.
intimacy coordinators, assistant directors, second unit directors, how people go from being the associate director to being the main guy in charge or main girl in charge. And, just shining a light on how we all work together in this business. It's not,
Absolutely.
yeah, it wasn't, just Christopher Nolan who made Batman. You know,
Absolutely.
he had a whole freaking team behind him. You know, editors, people, movement directors like yourself, and everything. You know,
Yeah.
I just love this business and just talking about it, and keeping involved in it in one way or another. And
Yeah.
I feel very lucky to have this show to talk to great people like yourself, and and just keep going with it. It's a lifelong
Yeah.
journey, and one that I look forward to riding. And but yeah, honestly, yeah, I could keep going. I can going about this stuff. But Imogen, no, we're definitely. I'd love to have you back. We've still got so much more to talk about, and yeah, honestly, I just thank you for being Thank you for being so generous with your time today and everything. It's been an
Oh, you're
absolute
so
joy.
welcome. I love talking about it because it's well, like your passion for it, it really is an act of love, and you can make it a choice,
Mm,
to work out of love, and
exactly.
love in all its facets, its fierceness, and
Yeah.
but to really make that choice to make from love and create from love and connect and share
Mm.
is that it creates more love.
Hugely, hugely so. And a freaking meant to that.
Yeah.
And cool, Brace. I don't know how to finish. This is fantastic. Imogen, this has been so much fun. Thank you so, so much. If you just hang
Mm.
on, I'll finish the recording and we'll have a little debrief afterwards. But yeah, but just
Perfect.
again, thank you so much for your time, for being so generous with it, and for sharing your experiences. It's been an absolute privilege. So thank you so, so much for that. And yeah, what's left for me to say is, guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic Podcast, and I'll be back very, very soon. And for now, Imogen Knight, thank you so much.
Thank you.